The twin suns of Velmore rose high over the wide square of the capital city. Their golden light fell on everything, buildings of crystal, the smooth stone roads, and the tall pillars that surrounded the center of the trial ground. But in the middle, inside a glowing cube of energy, sat one figure, weak, silent, and forgotten. Her name was Luma. Luma belonged to the Tirsi, a calm and intelligent alien race known for their beauty and logic. They had large eyes, soft-colored skin, and long, smooth limbs. Their cities were quiet, their laws were strict, and their people believed deeply in tradition. Luma had broken one of their oldest laws. She had spoken out during a council meeting, something a young Tirsi was never allowed to do. Even worse, she had questioned a senior member's decision. That alone was enough to sentence her to the ancient punishment. 10 days of reflection. To the Tirsi, this was not torture. They said it was a return to stillness, a way for the soul to learn. But in reality, it was worse than a prison. For 10 days, the one on trial would be placed in an energy cell, exposed to the sun, the wind, the noise alone, without food, water, or rest. No one was allowed to help, and everyone came to watch. The council said it was important to witness justice. The square filled with citizens. Some stood quietly, others whispered. A few even smiled. Floating cameras moved above the crowd, sending the image of Luma's suffering across the stars to other worlds, other species. On Velmore's spaceport, high above the surface, a human worker stood by a monitor. His name was Tomel, and he had been sent to Velmore 3 months ago to help maintain their orbital systems. He was not important. He was just an engineer. But today, he could not look away from the screen. Is this really how they punish people? He asked softly. His Velmorian co-worker, a short, thin Tirsi named Miran, glanced at him. It is tradition. She knew the risk. Tomel's face was tight. But it's 10 days, in the open. She's already sick. Miran blinked. She broke the peace of the council. This is her lesson. Tomel didn't answer. He just stared at Luma's image. Her body was thin. Her skin had already begun to turn pale under the heat. She did not cry. She did not scream. She just sat there silent, like she had accepted everything. That made it worse. That night, Tomel could not sleep. He lay on his bed in the spaceport dormitory, watching the stars through the window. His thoughts kept going back to her, Luma, sitting alone in the square. He had seen pain before. He had read about Earth's past wars, hunger, cruelty. But this was different. This was quiet suffering, public, accepted, and no one was doing anything. Tomel got up and sat at his desk. He opened the Galactic Union database and searched for Velmore's legal records. He wanted to know more about the punishment, but the files were clear. Non-interference was the rule. Each species followed their own ways. Even humans had agreed to it when they joined the Union. Respect for culture, they had called it. But Tomel felt something burning in his chest. The next morning, he went back to work. The square was still full. The cameras were still filming. Luma hadn't moved much. Her hands were shaking now. Her head was down. Tomel didn't say anything during his shift. But during lunch, he asked Miran, "Has anyone ever tried to stop this kind of trial?" Miran raised a brow. "No. Why would they? It is not cruel. It is cleansing." Tomel frowned. "Would you let your sister go through it?" Miran was quiet for a second. Then he said, "My sister would never speak against the council." Tomel looked away. By the 4th day, Luma had collapsed. She lay on the ground of the energy cell, unmoving. The medical sensors above her showed her vitals were weak, but still holding. Tomel sat alone in the cafeteria, watching the live feed. Other workers passed by, some ignoring the screen, others stopping for a moment before moving on. He felt sick. That night, he wrote a message to the human ambassador on Velmore. "Ambassador Ciro, this is Tomel from the spaceport. I am writing because I believe the punishment being given to the Tirsi female Luma is inhumane. I know we are told not to interfere with local laws, but I must ask, is there truly nothing we can do? If this is justice, then what is mercy?" He sent it and waited. There was no reply. On day 5, a small group of alien visitors arrived to watch the trial. They were from a cold planet called Nakar, and they recorded the trial for their own studies. They showed no sadness. They said, "This is valuable cultural information." Tomal turned off the monitor. That night, Tomal walked to the outer edge of the city, where the tall dome of the trial square began. From there, he could see the glowing cube far in the center, and inside it, just a small shape on the floor Luma. He stayed there for a long time, silent under the alien stars. He whispered to himself, "If I was there, if I was the one suffering, would anyone care?" And deep inside, he knew the answer. Not unless someone chose to care. Tomal woke early on the 6th day. His sleep had been light, broken by strange dreams. Luma reaching out to him through the energy field, her eyes empty, her lips moving without sound. When he entered the control room, he avoided the main screen. He knew Luma would still be there. He didn't want to see her like that again. Not yet, but he could still hear the broadcast. The same soft voice explained to the viewers, "The Tyrsey trial of reflection continues. Subject remains silent. No outside contact has been made. 5 days completed. 5 to go." Tomal shut his eyes. His shift was quiet. The others didn't talk about the trial. It was as if they had accepted it like whether something that simply happened. After work, he sat alone in his room and checked his inbox. There was one new message. "Tomal, thank you for your concern. Humanity is still being observed as a union member. We must be careful not to interfere. This case is sensitive. Ambassador Ciro." No warmth, no plan, just polite words. Tomal stared at the message. It felt like the ambassador hadn't even read what he wrote. He looked out the window again, toward the blue-green surface of Velmore. "We joined the stars," he whispered, "but forgot to bring our hearts." That evening, he visited the medical bay at the station. His friend Rima, a Martian-born medic, greeted him with a tired smile. "You don't look well," she said. "Still thinking about the Tyrsey girl?" Tomal nodded. I don't understand. She's dying." "Rima, and we're watching. Like it's a show." Rima poured him some warm tea. "I've seen the broadcast. Her vitals are dropping. If she goes another 2 days without water, her organs will start failing." Tomal's hands tightened around the cup. "And we're just letting it happen. For what? Culture?" Rima looked at him for a moment. "You know the rules. We can't interfere. Not unless it's officially declared illegal by the Union." Tomal leaned forward. "But what if the rules are wrong?" Rima sighed. "Then you either break them or live with them." The 7th day began with a change. A storm formed over the city. Dark clouds rolled across the sky. Rain started to fall, light at first, then heavy. The trial square was still open, the field around Luma glowing softly in the wet air. For the first time, the crowd thinned. Some left, others brought coverings. But no one helped the one who needed it most. Luma lay curled on her side, her skin pale and trembling. Her eyes were open, but unfocused. She didn't move. Tomal stood near the square, under a small roof. He watched silently, hidden behind the crowd. He whispered, "She won't survive 10 days." A Tyrsey elder nearby heard him and turned. "She has accepted her path," the elder said calmly. "You must accept it too." Tomal turned to him. "Would you survive this?" The elder blinked slowly. "It is not about surviving. It is about balance." Tomal walked away before he said something he would regret. That night, he returned to the station and opened his personal files. He started reading old Earth history again, stories of humans who stood alone, who helped strangers even when it was dangerous. There was one story that struck him deeply. It was about a man who had helped refugees during a time of war, hiding them even when his own life was at risk. The man had written in his journal, "I could not do nothing. Even if I could not stop the storm, I could hold an umbrella." Tomal closed the file. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then he opened the station system map, the one that connected the power grids and energy systems to the city below. On day 8, Luma stopped moving completely. Tomal stood in the operations center, staring at her image. The energy field around her flickered as the storm passed. She looked smaller than ever. The crowd was silent now, not out of pity, but out of tiredness. Even suffering grew boring after enough time. Tomo walked out. He went to the side hall, where the system controls were locked behind a panel. He had access as a maintenance engineer. Not full control, but enough. He entered his ID and studied the readings. The trial square ran on a special power grid. It couldn't be turned off easily, but it had support systems, emergency barriers, weather shields, security pulses. If those were activated all at once, maybe, just maybe, they could break the field for a moment. He memorized the timing. He studied the failsafes. And he asked himself one question: what if I try and fail? But another voice inside him whispered louder: what if I never try at all? That evening, he returned to Rima. If someone were to help her, he asked carefully, could she still recover? Rima looked surprised. If she gets help in the next days, yes, her body's weak, but not beyond saving. Why? Tomo looked at the stars outside the window. No reason, he said. But inside, the fire had started. On day 9, Luma's breath grew shallow. Her skin looked gray. The monitor showed her heart rate was dangerously slow. And somewhere, far above the city, in a quiet room filled with blinking lights, a human sat at a terminal with a plan forming in his mind. He didn't want fame. He didn't want attention. He just wanted someone to live, even if the whole galaxy said no. He was getting ready to say yes. The 9th day began with silence. The sky above Velmore was clear. The storm had passed, leaving behind clean streets and still air. The city looked calm, as if nothing unusual had happened. But inside the trial square, something was very wrong. Luma was no longer sitting. She was lying flat on her side, motionless. Her breathing was shallow. Her eyes barely opened. The glowing energy cell around her pulsed quietly, unchanged since the day it was activated. The crowd was smaller today. Most people had already seen enough. Some believed Luma was close to death, and they had lost interest. Others simply accepted that this was tradition and did not think further. But far above the city, in Velmore's orbital station, Tomo could not stop thinking. He sat in the corner of the cafeteria, staring at a small screen showing the live trial feed. The camera focused on Luma's face. Her lips were cracked. Her skin had lost its color. Even from a distance, it was clear she was dying. Tomo clenched his fists. Still watching? A voice asked gently. It was Rima. Tomo nodded. Yes, she won't last another day. Maybe not even half. Rima sat beside him and lowered her voice. I checked the latest vitals from the public medical feed. Her heart rate is below safety limits. If she doesn't get water soon, her body will shut down. Tomo looked at her. And we're just going to sit here? Rima sighed. You already know what the ambassador said. If we act, Earth could face charges. We could be removed from the Union. Tomo shook his head. What does membership mean if we stay silent while someone suffers right in front of us? Rima didn't answer. She just watched the screen. Luma had not moved in the last hour. That afternoon, Tomo returned to the systems room. The core was empty. Most of the engineers had gone to rest. He stood at the control terminal and looked again at the trial square's energy systems. The outer shield was connected to Velmore's deep core power grid. Direct shutdown was impossible. But as he had discovered, there were support systems designed to protect the field during natural disasters. Tomo had found a pattern. If the weather shields, internal balancing systems, and outer dampeners were activated at the exact right moment, it could cause a soft reboot. That meant the field would drop for only a few seconds, maybe 5, maybe 10. Enough to step inside. Enough to pull her out. He stared at the screen. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device he had been building. It was no weapon, just a pulse trigger linked to the city's emergency grid. He had spent 2 nights designing it. He didn't want to harm anyone. He didn't want to start a fight. He just wanted to help. Later that night, he stood at the edge of the square. The crowd was quiet now. Only a few Tirsi were present, most watching from a distance. Floating cameras continued to record. Some hovered close to Luma. Others moved above. capturing the peaceful stars and the glowing buildings. Toma looked down at his wrist where the small trigger was hidden under his sleeve. He took a slow breath. He had sent one final message to Earth's ambassador just hours ago. I'm not doing this as a human representative. I'm doing this as a person who can no longer stand by. You can punish me later if you want, but I won't wait until she dies. No reply came. Tomal stepped closer to the square. The field around Luma buzzed softly. She was still lying there so still. He thought she had already passed. A camera drifted toward him, sensing movement. He looked into it directly. He didn't speak yet. He waited. Then he pressed the pulse button. A sound like a whisper filled the air. The lights in the square flickered. The energy cell around Luma shimmered then vanished with a soft crack. Gasps echoed from a few watchers. Demel ran forward. In seconds. He was at Luma's side. He dropped to his knees and pulled off his jacket, wrapping it gently around her. She was light to light. He could feel every bone as he lifted her. Luma's eyes opened just slightly. She looked at him not in fear, not in surprise, but in something deeper, as if she had waited for this moment, but had never truly believed it would come. Toma whispered, "I've got you." Then the alarms began. Tirsi guards ran toward the square. The energy field tried to restart, but it was too late. Tomal had already stepped out of the circle, Luma in his arms. One camera hovered close, recording everything. Tomal looked at it again, and this time, he spoke clearly. "She's not a lesson. She's a life." The guards stopped in front of him. Unsure what to do. One elder shouted, "You have broken the sacred law." Tomal replied, "Then your law needs to break too." Moments later, he was surrounded, but he did not run. He stood there, holding Luma, while a crowd slowly gathered again. Some looked shocked, some angry, but many just stood still, silent, watching. The cameras kept rolling. The image of a single human standing in front of the council, holding a dying girl he was never supposed to help, was being shared across dozens of planets. Tomal didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know if he would be arrested, deported, or punished by the Union. But deep inside, he felt no fear. He had done what no one else dared to do. He had acted. Tomal sat in a quiet room made of smooth white stone. The walls were empty. The lights were soft. A silent camera floated in the corner, watching his every move. He had been taken here the moment the guards surrounded him. They didn't hurt him. They didn't speak harshly. But they took Luma from his arms. They carried her to the medical wing under the council's orders. Tomal had begged to go with her, but they refused. Now he waited. Outside, the city was no longer silent. The image of what happened, Tomal breaking the trial barrier, lifting Luma, and speaking to the cameras had already spread to over 50 planets. News networks showed it on every screen. The words he spoke, "She's not a lesson, she's a life," were being repeated across the stars, and people were listening. Some called him a hero. Others called him a criminal. But no one was ignoring him. Inside the council chambers, the leaders of Velmore gathered. 12 Tirsi elders sat in a circle of blue light, their faces calm, but their voices tense. "This human has disrespected our oldest law," said Elder Farron, the eldest of the group. He stepped into a sacred space. He removed the subject from her trial. "This cannot be accepted." He did it on live broadcast. Another elder added, "Now other species question our customs." There was a long silence. Then Elder Rael, the youngest on the council, spoke carefully. He acted out of mercy. Elder Farron raised an eyebrow. "Mercy cannot replace order," Rael replied, "but order without heart becomes stone." The room fell quiet again. Meanwhile, on the space station above Velmore, Rima watched the news feed. She saw the video of Tomal again and again. Every time, it felt heavier in her chest. She opened her medical pad and checked Luma's updated report. Status, stable. Vitals, improving slowly, under full medical care. A breath of relief escaped her lips. She whispered, "He made it in time." Suddenly, a message alert appeared on her screen. "Rima, we need your help. Please report to the surface clinic. Medical aid is now allowed." Rima stood up at once. Something was changing. Back in the white room, Tomal was still waiting. His hands were resting on his knees. His mind kept going back to the moment he held Luma. Her body had been so cold, so light, but when she looked at him, he had seen something clear trust, even in the middle of pain. The door opened. Two council guards entered. Behind them walked a tall Tirasi dressed in white and silver. "I am Elder Rael," the figure said. Tomal stood up slowly. "What's going to happen to me?" Rael didn't answer immediately. He walked around the room, then stopped in front of the camera and gave a slight nod. The camera blinked once, then floated out of the room. Now they were alone. Rael looked at Tomal with unreadable eyes. "Do you know what you have done?" Tomal nodded. "Yes. You broke our law. I know. You may have caused political damage between your people and ours. I understand." Rael stepped closer. His voice was calm, but sharper now. "Then why did you do it?" Tomal looked him straight in the eyes. "Because I saw a living person dying in front of me, and no one was doing anything. I couldn't just stand there." Rael was silent for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "Luma is alive. She is recovering." Tomal closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight lift from his shoulders. "She asked for you," Rael added, twice. Tomal opened his eyes. "Can I see her?" Rael hesitated. "Not yet. The council is still deciding what to do with you." Tomal clenched his fists, but kept his voice calm. "Then let them decide. I would do it again." Rael studied him. Then he turned and walked away, leaving Tomal alone once more. That evening, the Union Council met in orbit. Ambassadors from dozens of species gathered in a virtual chamber. Earth's representative, Ambassador Ciro, spoke to the council. "Humanity respects tradition," she said, "but we also respect life. What Tomal did may break law, but it follows something deeper, what we call moral duty." The Nakar ambassador, cold and sharp, replied, "Are you saying duty should rise above law?" Ciro answered, "I'm saying laws without mercy will always lead to injustice." The debate continued for hours, but the message was clear. Tomal's actions had started a conversation the Union could no longer avoid. On Velmore, something unexpected began to happen. People started placing small stones near the trial square. Each stone had a marksome symbol. Lines, some with circles. They were symbols of remembrance. Something not seen in Velmore traditions for years. Children asked their parents, why was the human punished? Artists began painting quiet pictures of Loom alone in the cube, and then in Tomal's arms. A change had begun. That night, Tomal was allowed to step outside the white room. A guard led him through quiet hallways until they reached the medical center. There, behind a glass door, Luma lay on a soft bed, covered with a clean blanket. Her skin looked better. Her breathing was stronger. Her eyes were closed, but peaceful. Tomal placed a hand gently on the glass. A soft voice behind him said, "She will wake soon." He turned to see Rima, holding a medical tablet. "She's stronger than I thought," she said. "You got her out just in time." Tomal nodded, tears gathering in his eyes. "Thank you for coming." Rima smiled. "You didn't think I'd leave you alone in this, did you?" They stood there together in silence, watching Luma sleep. Tomal didn't know what tomorrow would bring: punishment, exile, or something else. But in that moment, none of it mattered. He had done what his heart told him was right, and that had made all the difference. The news spread faster than the stars. Across the Galactic Union, thousands of channels played the same video again and again. Tomal stepping into the trial square, lifting Luma in his arms, and walking through the flickering shield while everyone else watched. Some called it illegal. Others called it bravery. But no matter what they called it, they could not ignore it. On Velmore, the streets were quieter than usual. The people didn't know how to feel. Tradition had been challenged. A law had been broken. But still, a life had been saved. Inside the medical wing, Luma finally opened her eyes. She blinked slowly, trying to understand where she was. The bright sky above her was gone. The energy field was gone. The pain in her chest was still there, but softer now. And beside her bed sat someone she recognized. To Mel. He was asleep in a chair, arms crossed, head resting against the wall. His face looked tired, but peaceful. Luma turned her head slightly. "Why?" she whispered. Though her voice was weak, Tomel stirred. He looked up, saw her eyes open, and sat up quickly. "You're awake," he said, a soft smile spreading across his face. "I was afraid I wouldn't see that again." She tried to speak, but only a whisper came out. He leaned closer. She asked again, "Why?" Tomel thought for a moment. He didn't have big words. He didn't need them, because no one else did, he said. Luma looked into his eyes. There was no anger in hers, only something quiet, something like hope. Outside, the council chamber filled once more. Elder Farron stood at the center, addressing the people of Velmore through the city's central broadcast system. The human named Tomel broke a sacred law. He interfered with a punishment that was not his to question, he said. This act has disturbed the peace of our people and the balance of our traditions. The crowd listened, mostly in silence, but not all of them agreed. From a side corner, a Tirasi teacher raised her hand. "Elder," she said, "was it not also our law to protect life?" Another voice added, "If someone is dying, should law come before kindness?" Farron paused. He did not answer. He had never been questioned like this before. The youngest elder, Rael, stepped forward. "Our people have always followed reason," he said gently. "But reason without heart is not wisdom. It is only silence." The crowd murmured softly. A quiet shift was beginning. Back in the medical wing, Rima checked Luma's vitals. "She's strong," she told Tomel. "She'll make it. Just needs rest." Tomel nodded, watching Luma sip a small cup of water. She was still weak, but sitting up now, wrapped in a soft blanket. Rima smiled. "You saved her." Tomel looked away. "I just did what I had to do." Rima placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did what no one else dared to do." That afternoon, Tomel was called to the council chamber. He walked through the halls of polished stone, his steps echoing in the silence. The guards did not touch him. No one pushed him forward, but the air felt heavy. Inside, the 12 elders sat in a half circle. Behind them, a large screen showed floating images. Luma in the trial square, Tomel carrying her. The moment the shield fell, Tomel stood alone at the center. Elder Farron spoke first. "Tomel of Earth, do you understand the seriousness of your actions?" Tomel met his eyes. "Yes, I do. You interfered with our justice." "I did." "You broke the energy field and entered without permission." "I did." "Why?" Tomel took a breath. Then he answered, "Because she was suffering, and I couldn't walk away anymore." Some elders shifted in their seats. Rael leaned forward. "Do you regret your actions?" Tomel shook his head. "No. If I had waited one more day, she would have died." Rael nodded slightly. Elder Farron looked at the others. A quiet conversation passed between them, without words. Finally, Farron stood. "Your action has caused great discussion across Velmore and the wider Union," he said. "Some believe you have insulted our ways. Others believe you have awakened something we have forgotten." Tomel waited, heart steady. After long discussion, Farron continued, "We will not sentence you." Tomel's eyes widened slightly. "You will, however, be asked to leave Velmore within 2 days. Your presence has become disruptive," Farron said. Tomel nodded slowly. "I understand." Rael added gently, "But before you go, Luma has requested to see you once more." Later that evening, Tomel sat again at Luma's bedside. She was stronger now. Her color had returned. Her voice was clearer. "Is it true?" she asked. "You have to leave?" Tomel gave a small smile. "Yes, they said I stirred the peace." Luma looked down. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," he said. "You're alive. That's all I care about." She looked at him with soft eyes. "You changed something, even if they don't say it out loud yet." Tomel shrugged. "I just did what felt right." Luma reached out and took his hand. "You didn't just save me," she said. "You reminded everyone that life matters more than silence." Tomel held her hand gently. "Promise me something," she said. "Anything. Don't stop being that kind of human. The one who cares." Tomel smiled. "I promise." As the stars rose over Velmore that night, a human packed his small bag and looked out one last time over the city and far across the stars. Beings of every shape and kind watched the story unfold. They saw the moment one man stood against tradition, not with weapons, but with compassion. And slowly, one by one, they began to ask themselves, what would I have done? The skies above Velmore were quiet. Tomel stood at the edge of the spaceport, a small travel bag resting at his feet. His ship was ready. He had been ordered to leave within 2 days, and now the time had come. He looked down one last time at the glowing city far below, the same city that had once watched a girl suffer without blinking, and then watched her be saved. Now, the silence felt different. It was not cold. It was thoughtful. Behind him, footsteps approached. Tomel turned and saw Rima walking toward him, holding a folded cloth. You forgot this, she said. Handing him his old work jacket, Tomel smiled and took it. Thanks. Not sure I'll need it where I'm going. Rima looked around, then said softly, There's a message for you, from Luma. Tomel's heart paused. Is she okay? She's better. Still weak, but healing fast. Her voice is stronger now, and her spirit, too. Rima pulled a small chip from her pocket and placed it in his palm. She said it's private. Tomel nodded. I'll listen to it when I'm on the ship. Rima looked at him with deep respect. You changed everything, Tomel, even if the council doesn't say it, they know it. People are talking, really talking for the first time in years. I just didn't want her to die, Tomel said simply, and because of that, Rima replied. Others might live. Back in the city, Luma sat by the window of her clinic room. The sunlight was gentle today. The air was cool. A small group of Tirasi children were outside, placing small polished stones along the walkway. One of them looked up at her and smiled. Luma smiled back. She had not spoken in public yet. The council had not asked her to. But every day, more people came to visit her. Not to question, not to judge, just to sit quietly, to be present. She knew something had changed, not just in her, but in her people. As Tomel's ship lifted off, broadcast across the Union continued. Some debated whether his act had broken the Union's laws. Others argued it had awakened a new question: should all species follow the same core values? An old scholar from a distant world said during a broadcast, we must ask ourselves when. Is a tradition no longer wise? And when does silence become guilt? On Earth, messages of support filled the Union channel. Young students shared drawings of Tomel and Luma. Writers published essays titled One Act, One Life, and the Human Who Reminded Us. Even those who didn't agree with his method admitted he had done something that would not be forgotten. Inside his small cabin, Tomel placed the message chip into the reader. Luma's voice filled the room, soft and slow. Tomel, I don't know how to thank you. I don't have the right words. But I want to say something before you leave. I was taught to accept, to obey, to be quiet. But you reminded me that life isn't just about rules. It's about courage, too. You gave me a second chance, not just at living, but at being myself. If I ever become part of the council, if I ever have a voice again, I will use it, not to repeat old ways, but to help change them, because of you. Tomel sat still for a long time after the message ended. He didn't cry, but his chest felt heavy, full. Not with sorrow, but with something like peace. 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened on VELM, or the High Council of Justice. The oldest and most respected group on the planet held an emergency meeting. They announced that the trial of reflection, the same punishment that had nearly ended Luma's life, was officially suspended. Full review of the law would begin. Public discussion was allowed. Voices were invited. And for the first time in generations, the people of Velmore would not just obey, they would speak. In the outer colonies of the Union, news of Velmore's change spread quickly. On some planets, small reforms were made. On others, debates began. A phrase started appearing in many languages, shared across space stations, learning halls, and even street walls. Be the one who dares. No one had to explain what it meant. They all knew. Back on Earth, A quiet ceremony was held. It wasn't grand. It wasn't loud. Just a simple gathering of those who believed in what Tomel had done. They placed a small marker in the Hall of Union Heroes, not for war, not for technology, but for compassion. It read, Tomel of Earth. He did not save a planet. He saved one life, and reminded us all of the value in one soul. In his new home, far from Velmore. Tomel worked at a quiet post repairing star beacons on the edge of the Union's trade routes. He didn't mind the silence. He liked the stars. Sometimes, travelers recognized him, some shook his hand, others only nodded. He never asked for thanks. One day, while repairing a beacon near a small moon, he received a new message. It was from Luma. She had been invited to speak at the first Open Council session on Velmore. She was using her voice for the first time without fear. Her message ended with, I'm not alone anymore. Others have joined me. You lit the flame. We'll keep it burning. Tomel looked up at the stars. They were quiet, but they were not empty. 3 months had passed since Tomel left Velmore. He now lived on a quiet research post on the Outer Rim, orbiting a small moon called Keller. It was peaceful here. The days were slow, the stars always bright, and few visitors ever came. Tomel liked the silence. But even in this calm place, he often thought of Luma, her still form inside that glowing trial cube, her soft voice asking, why? And the moment she finally opened her eyes again, every evening, he checked the Union news feed not for politics, but to see if Velmore had changed, and it had. Bit by bit, Velmore's council had not reversed all laws, but they had begun discussions with citizens. For the first time in generations, the Tyranny allowed open speech. Elder Rail led many of the new conversations. Young voices were welcomed, elders listened. Questions were not punished anymore, and at the heart of this shift stood Luma. She had become a symbol, not a hero of war or power, but of survival and quiet strength. People came to hear her speak. Her story was simple, but it was real. She told them what it felt like to be ignored, to be punished for a voice she hadn't even raised in anger, only in concern, and how she was saved not by a law, not by a council, but by one person who refused to walk away. One day, Tomel received a message marked private. He opened it. Luma's face appeared on the screen. She was sitting in a public square surrounded by tyranny of all ages. Her eyes were calm, her smile peaceful. Tomel, she said, I know you don't like attention, but I wanted to send you this. She turned to the crowd behind her. This is for you, she said to them. Then she raised her voice, not loud, but clear. There was a time when I believed silence was safety, that following every rule meant I was good, that questions made you dangerous. But now, I understand something new. Tradition without heart becomes a cage. We must be strong enough to ask why, and we must thank the ones who ask it first. There was one who dared to save me. A visitor, a human. He did not break me out of prison. He broke me out of fear. I stand today because one person chose to care. The crowd behind her began to clap, not loud or wild, but honest. Then she looked at the camera again. I hope you're well. I hope you're still fixing stars and drinking bad space tea, she added with a small laugh. We miss you. The message ended. Tomel leaned back in his chair, feeling something warm inside. For a long time, he said nothing, but he smiled. The Union itself had begun to shift as well. Other planets had started revisiting old punishments. Questions were asked in council chambers that had never allowed disagreement before. A few worlds even introduced something new. Compassion councils, groups designed to review laws. Based on both justice and mercy, the story of Velmore was always mentioned. And so was the name Tomel of Earth, though he never returned to the spotlight. His single act became a lesson in over 50 academies, translated into dozens of languages. Not for breaking a rule, but for choosing a life. One evening, while Tomel was checking the comms system on the station roof, he saw a small light blink. Incoming visitor. He walked inside and checked the logs. One name appeared. Luma. Mel froze. He rushed to the docking bay. The small shuttle landed slowly, its lights cutting through the soft blue mist of the moon's thin atmosphere. The door opened, and there she stood, still slender, still calm but no longer fragile. Her eyes met his. Tomel stepped forward, unsure what to say. Luma smiled gently. "You didn't think I'd stay quiet forever, did you?" Tomel chuckled. "I thought maybe you'd become council leader first." She walked up to him, hands behind her back. "I took a break. I needed to visit someone." Tomel's voice softened. "Why now?" Luma looked up at the stars. "Because I needed to say thank you. Not with a message, but face to face." Tomel's eyes met hers. "You already did," he said. They stood together in the soft wind, the stars above them bright and steady. Luma spoke again. "You reminded us that one voice matters. That kindness isn't weakness. That it's okay to stand up alone when no one else will." Tomel looked out toward the horizon. "And now you're not alone anymore," he said. Luma nodded. "Thanks to you." That night, they sat by the station window, sharing warm drinks and stories. Luma spoke of the young Tirsi who had found courage. Tomel told her about the stars he had repaired and the tiny life around this moon. There was no ceremony, no crowd, just two people who had met in a moment of pain, now sharing peace. The galaxy kept turning. Ships flew, councils met, worlds continued to change slowly, but surely. And on many of those worlds, if you visited the right place, you would find a small plaque. Sometimes on a school wall, sometimes on a garden stone. And each one had the same words. He didn't save a city, he saved one voice, and in doing so, taught us to listen.